I will try to give you a little bit other perspective from the countries of the new member states, and how we see the social housing problems. And when we are talking about using the EU funds, I think most of the politicians in Hungary at least are very much focusing on spending as much money as you can. And the question that what is the efficiency of these expenditures and programs is the secondary question to show that we already spent the money. So I think that one of the big issue is that how we can build up in these countries an institutional structure which will guarantee the efficient use of the money. And it was already mentioned in one of the presentations before that EFS money can be used for this kind of the work. But my presentation focused on three things. Very shortly mentioned that what was the last 20 years, how we basically lost the opportunity to build up a new social housing system in the place of the old one. The second issue is that just to highlight some of the elements of the nature of the social housing problem in this region, which is very different from the West European or the EU 17 countries in terms because we are having a different demographic and economic situation. And the third issue, I just want to show you one project which tried to manage the new situation and build up a kind of social housing agencies in Hungary. And I will be very short on these things, and already we know that in the first stage it was just a crisis management. In the second stage it was a transitional recession till the end of the 2000, and basically new institutions were built up, but nothing happened in housing. And the most interesting period was from around 2000 to 2008, when there was an opportunity, there was a growth in the economy, and there was an opportunity to build a new social housing system, but somehow it didn't work. None of the countries, I think, even not in the Czech Republic, which is one of the, I think, according to my view, one of the most developed in social housing, and we are now in the housing crisis situation. I don't want to go to these details, but I think if you want to understand the institutional structures and the welfare system we are moving to, there are three main forces in the society, which is not, which is working parallel. You know, it's not really just follow a certain process stages, but it really works in sometimes parallel. One is the marketing, forcing the markets and introduce the market. Second, the correction of the market. And third, retaining all structures. So using some of the models which work even in the socialist period. Just to give an example, in Hungary, after the decentralization and after the moving to the marketization, Hungary is a very interesting experiment. We moved back to the centralization and we tried to nationalize certain public services, which is, nobody knows that what will be the result. But one of the most important things in this new member state was the privatization. And you can see from this chart that basically each of the countries privatized the majority of the social housing they used to have. And today the level of the public rental or social housing is very, very low, most of the countries. The only exception is that maybe the Czech Republic is the highest, but to tell the truth, and even the Czech Republic right now, in Hungary, for example, we finalized the privatization basically in the beginning of 2000. But in Czech Republic, my information is that even privatization is on. So this is a very important thing, more important that we realize that the forces toward the privatization is always a danger for social housing. And we are there are very different views on this. We are sometimes, so politicians are very happy that the owner occupation and the private property is increasing. This is a kind of indicator of the success of the housing policy. So, and this, from this point of view, I think it's very dangerous that we build up a new social housing system and it's just, again, there is a privatization drive. Just to give you an example, the TBS, this social housing in Poland, for example, was recently a proposal in the parliament to privatize the small social housing stock, which was really represented one of the most modern, most efficient social institution in the traditional countries. But the puzzle is that why we have this failure. What is the reason that we don't have a social housing policy more concrete? And I think that one of the reasons is that because it was decentralized, there was no institution behind the social housing. There was no strong institution who had to fight for this. Like in Holland, the social housing association, they are very strong and fight for their survival. And it is not working in the Eastern Europe and the new member states because local government were not financially and politically interested in this sector. I wouldn't argue that there was no good programs, but rational local government behavior is moving forward the privatization. And no private sector involvement in the social sector. Several countries tried this, that was basically a success, a failure. And the third element is that the whole taxation system is very much against the rental sector and the social rental sector. It was always cheaper to buy than the rent. And even, and probably the most important thing is the lack of the political commitment. And here, the support from EU was, I think, was not enough for the institutional building. And OIM was very happy to see that the new programs will focus more on the institutional and the structural changes than just to spend the money for anything. So what is the nature of I'm sorry because it just disappeared the graph here. Okay. Okay, just very shortly that housing consumption and economic development, if I have a chart but it somehow disappeared from these slides. If you compare the level of the housing consumption in the new member state and the old member state, I mean, it's around 50-60% of the level in terms of the size of the housing, in terms of the access to the bathroom and access to other things. But the GDP is 60% overall. So I think this is one of the problems that we have to deal with it. The second problem is more important. There is a huge income inequality which arises in these countries. And this causes a lot of the problem, and the main of the problem is housing affordability. And the third one is a new thing in the last 5-10 years, is the housing security. It's very few people realize yet that because of the arrears of the utility cost and the mortgage payment, there is a huge security problem in this country, which lead to a marginalization and a segregation. Marginalization is when the people disappear from the mainstream market and disappear in the remote places and not necessarily segregated, but they are a very dangerous situation. I think that the social housing is basically depending on the housing affordability issue. And I think that we don't need to care very much on that. What is the institutional form for solving this problem? And the discourse in social housing is very much dominated by the social, big and large and important social landlords in the EU 17, and maybe the Austrian, Netherlands, and France. And this is dealing with the problems of the new member states. And one other element which is missing from the most of the approach, but in today morning we heard this, and I liked it very much, that affordability is not just how you afford a housing cost. Affordability means that you have to afford a housing which is located close to the job market and social public services. And this is a huge difference from the different programs. Okay, so just one issue that about what we can do in these countries. I think that because of the low level of the public ownership and social sector, social housing sector, it is an illusion that in this economic, after the economic crisis, we can invest a lot of money for building up a new sector. So probably we have to use the existing owner-occupied or private sector opportunity. And this was the project we are working on to introducing so-called social rental agencies, which set up new institutions and try to rent housing from the private sector and give to the social needy people. And here, I show here that what are the risks and on both the landlord and tenant side, and this is what this institution has to manage. And the program we just put forward and we are working on try to set up this institution which manage the risk related to the sector and try to allocate subsidies and give incentives for the landlord and the tenants. And today the interesting thing is that there are important institutions who are interested in this, but there is a need for a political force to put together these institutions. In Hungary, one of the most important social housing programs which started is basically because of the mortgage crisis. So we have more than 150,000 people who have a mortgage arrears more than 90 days, and they're set up as a state property agency which have a plan to buy 25,000 units in the next 2 years, which is the biggest social housing program if it works. And the question is that how this program can be a first step toward a new type of the social housing program. Okay, thank you.